don't forget to click that subscribe and bell icon to receive a notification each time I upload a new video. Hi everyone, it's Mike here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I'm going to be diving into my 12 by 12 art journal and I'm going to let go. I'm going to allow just inspiration and my creativity to just happen today. I'm just going to embrace the chaos, as it were. So let me turn over to my other camera and show you what I'm going to create. Okay, so this is my 12 by 12 art journal, which is really a scrapbook which I picked up from my local hobby store, but it's ideal for turning into an art journal page, or an art journal full stop. There's plenty of room to play with and there's plenty of room to experiment with paint, which is what I'm going to do today. I'm going to reacquaint myself with a few different ways of laying paint down onto an art journal page and see what happens. It's kind of like a let's just suck it and see kind of day, because I've not really got a particular idea of what I want to achieve or what I want the final art journal page to look like. Like I said earlier, I'm just going to let go and kind of expect the unexpected. In fact, I probably will use that as the final kind of quote or phrase to put on the art journal page at the end. So to begin with then, I'm going to add a layer of white gesso, mainly because I want to be able to maneuver the paint on the page. I don't want the paint pigments to soak straight into the paper fibres, so that I can't maneuver or move the paint around. And adding a layer of white gesso or even clear gesso will allow me to do that. And I'm just going to add the gesso in a kind of haphazard kind of way. I'm not particularly bothered about thickness and consistency of thickness of where I'm adding it. I will end up leaving some areas thinner than others. So what this gesso will do, for those of you that aren't really familiar with gesso, is that it provides a ground for your paint to sit on. Most gesso has a kind of a tooth which will help your paint adhere and bond to the surface of what you're working on, but also, which is kind of a bit of an oxymoron in this case, it will also allow the paint to move. It won't soak into your page straight away, which means that you can maneuver your paint before it kind of sets and dries almost immediately, which it will do if you don't add gesso onto your page. So it kind of gives you a little bit of, and I use this phrase a lot, wiggle room on your page to be able to get your paint where you want it before it kind of sets and dries. And I will be using acrylics today, so these will be permanent when dry, unlike water-based, like watercolours and water-based inks, that kind of thing, which will move again once you add water. These won't. So there's my white gesso. I need to get that dried. Okay, now of course, the thicker the gesso, the longer it'll take to dry. The thinner the gesso, the quicker it is. So just be careful. You can normally tell with your gesso that it's all dry when it stops being shiny. So if you've added it on really, really thick, then it'll stay shiny for longer. So there are some areas around about here which are probably just surface dry, but maybe still a little bit wet underneath, but that's fine. Don't mind that at all. Right, so as I said earlier, today's page is really all about me kind of reacquainting myself with art journal paint techniques. So the first thing that I want to do is to add some paint onto the page, and I'm just going to randomly add some daubs of paint. I don't know what I've done with my little bin. I normally throw my little bits of rubbish into. Alright, I'm just going to drop a couple of drops of this, I want to say Gettysburg blue, but it's not, it's Williamsburg blue from Americana, or the Deco Art range. Now, normally, if you hadn't put gesso on the page, the pigments in those paints would have burnt into the page already, and you wouldn't have been able to manoeuvre and move the paint around like this. It would have literally just clumped in those areas. So I'm just going to manoeuvre the paint. As you can see, it's allowing me to pull that paint down. Can you see how I'm going in those kind of diagonals? So let's just add a little bit more. And then manoeuvre around, and then bring it down a bit further. That's it. So using a baby wipe, a wet wipe, with a little bit of moisture in it, it's almost, well, it's only just wet. Fantastic. I'm liking that. I'm liking the darkness of the colour. Of course, if I want to take a little bit more, just before it gets too dry, grab your baby wipe, and you can do this because you've added that gesso onto the page first. And I know it looks like a bit of a mess at the moment, but that's fine. So again, I've used acrylic paint, so it will dry fairly quickly. Okay, so paint's totally dry. So what I'm going to do now is just add some of this ochre onto the page. So I'm going to kind of just do a layer of that ochre on the page. I'll grab another wet wipe, and this time I'm going to go this way. I'm going to do it kind of roughly, up and down. And then I'm going to grab a sponge and just go in and just soften those marks that I put in with that tissue. Now what I can do is just grab some more of that paint, and just to the side I can load some up into the sponge. So it's now all in the sponge. There's virtually none left on my paint, my mat there. And then I can start layering and adding some darker points using that paint, or some darker stippled areas. And just blend that out. Okay, so the next bit, I'm going to use some of this desert cactus. Sorry, the colour on that one was the true ochre. So that's the Williamsburg blue, that's the true ochre, and this is the desert cactus, or as sometimes we call it, the dessert cactus. Right, so let's just try and lift that no matter how careful you are with those paint pots, unless you remember to wipe them every single time, you always get a little bit of residue. Okay, so remember to shake them up just to make sure that your binder has mixed again with the paint, your pigments, and then this time I'm going to use a brayer. Now, this brayer is so old, I never used to clean my brayer. So what I've had to do, I have to excuse my squeaky chair as well today. So what I had to do before I started doing this page and before I turned the camera on was I had to go over it again with a piece of sandpaper just to kind of remove any bumps and bits of texture that was on there. So you could do this just on a piece of paper if you want to, but I found it just as easy just to do it on my paint mat. So I'm now going to go over that with the brayer. So again, like I said, this is just a way of me to re-familiarise myself with techniques for adding paint onto an art journal page. There we go. So normally you'd take a wet wipe and just wipe your brayer down after you've finished using it. Now, because I know what colour the brayer was beforehand, I can tell whether I've taken all the paint off or not. And this is the reason why the paint over the time builds up, because you never quite get it all off. Suppose unless you take it off and give it a good scrub under the tap, which I don't really have time for today. So that's going to be it. So let's get cleaned up. Clean up this mess, and by the time we've done that, this will be dry. There you go, not a single bit of paint has just come off of my hands. I'll pop that brayer to one side. Okay, so we've kind of built up a bit of a stormy landscape, haven't we? We've got a little bit of green down there, we've got some kind of like foliage, maybe like cornfields in the background, and then we've got that kind of rainy sign, kind of stormy kind of sky up there in the top. Totally unintentional, but I'm so glad that we did. So I'm going to try and find out what did I do with that white gesso. There it is, there's the white gesso again. Obviously you could use white paint if you want to, but I'm out of acrylic white paint at the moment. It's one of the things I need to stock up on when I next go to the art store. See if I can try and get either another Americana titanium white or the Dina Wakley white. So what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of white paint, and I'm just going to bring that kind of cloud look breaks up the blue a little bit, gives it a bit more of a wispy kind of feel to it. Just breaks it up a little. Okay, I'm happy with that. Just clean that off. Okay, I'll just put that gesso to one side for the minute. So I want to add some texture paste in now. So I'm going to bring in this stencil. This is a newish stencil. Excuse me. So this is called Cellular. So this will be available on my website to pre-order in the next day or two. So that's going to be on there fairly soon. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to place this just kind of in the middle there. But before I do that, I'm just going to take a piece of kitchen roll. I'm just going to tear it. So I'm just going to lay that down towards that bit there. Or maybe should we do it like that? So I'm creating a little bit of a mask because I don't want a defined edge to any of this. So what did I do with my, there it is right in front of me, structure paste. So any kind of structure paste or texture paste will do, whatever brand you prefer. So let's just get some of that down there. Now what I can do before we even start is just to add a little bit of colour, just so I'm not using completely white structure paste, so you can add colour to it. So this is going to be pretty much colour matching to what I'm going to be doing. So let's just grab some of that on the stencil, and then I'm just going to swipe lumps. That's not good. Big lumps in there. Right, so let's just try and grab a bit more. See how creamy that is. Just a touch of paint again. So again, another way, like I said, of adding colour onto your page is adding it in texture. Okay, so that'll do for that bit there. So let's just lift that off. And I can throw those two bits of tissue away. And before we get any further, I want to obviously add a little bit more. So I'll just wipe that off my spatula because I don't want to contaminate my texture paste that much. Okay, so there's some more there. Grab another piece of kitchen roll. Tear that, and we can lay that down just on the edge there. Grab the stencil, a bit more paint, and then start again. That'll do me. There we go. Okay, so I'll need to clean that stencil off quickly before it all dries on, and I also managed to get some on my trousers, which is just ridiculous. So I'll just need to give those a quick wipe as well before it dries too much, because otherwise it'll never come out. So I'll do that, get it all cleaned, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so just before this dries, I just want to come back in with my finger, and I'm just going to just gently smooth out and blend that edge. Because it was a bit harsher than I thought it was going to be. Obviously I hadn't feathered the kitchen roll correctly. Or enough anyway. So let's just drag that so it just diffuses and blends that edge. There we go. God, listen to my chair. Fab. Okay, now don't worry about that oaky yellow being covered up, because we can address that once everything's dry. So, like I said, I'll go get everything cleaned up and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm often asked what's the best way to clean stencils. Well, to be honest, that really depends on what it is that you've actually used through that stencil. If it's a water-based medium, then like water-based inks or water-based paints or whatever, then just use water to clean your stencil, because you know it's a water-based medium. If you've used a solvent-based medium like permanent inks, such as the StazOns and that kind of stuff, then you can wipe your stencils down with rubbing alcohol or surgical spirits, as it is here in the UK, which is the nearest thing to that, and you know that will clean them. If you've used texture paste like I've just done, then as long as it hasn't dried, you can just clean that off with water. And I like to use a stiffish kind of brush, like a nail brush, and I have joked in the past about using Ian's toothbrush, which I don't really, to clean the stencil, because that will actually get into the holes as well and clean it all off. So just be careful, or just think about what it is that you've used through the stencil, because that usually is the same thing that will help to clean your stencil as well. So rule of thumb, just think about what you've used. Right, so there we go, that's on there. So next I'm going to do is I've got some Daler Rowney artist acrylic ink. So this is liquid ink and it's got a little pipette. So I'm going to put a couple of drops right the way across. Now this is again yellow ochre, so this is the same colour as what we dropped underneath that texture paste. So I've also got a spritz, so I'm now going to just loosen that up a little and just let that run backwards and forwards, up and down a bit. So this is why I said don't worry about us losing that line a little bit, or the colour underneath, because I'm bringing it back in with this. And of course if you want it moving, just add more water and back. And if you've got to the point where you've got a little bit too much in some areas where you don't really want it, just go in and dab it off. Now I'm happy with that splattering up there, very much so. So I'm going to try and keep it just going left and right, backwards and forwards, and then down a bit, up a bit, just to diffuse and blur those lines all the way to the edge, all the way back, just like that. And then we'll get it dry. Okay, so That's pretty dry now, so I want to add a little bit of darkness, down into that bit there. So I think I'm going to use, shall I use raw sienna or sepia? I think we'll use sepia. So let me just give it a shake up, because even with these Daler-Rowney can't even speak now. Daler-Rowney acrylics, you will still have to shake them. But I'm not adding a huge amount. So you could see the difference between the amount of the yellow that I used and what I'm using with that sepia. So I'm really going to water this down. And there's a little text message just coming in. Ian's away this weekend at the at a steampunk event in North Yorkshire, Whitby. So he's been giving me regular updates on progress. It's his first one of the year, so this is why I'm taking advantage of the quiet. Right, so I'm going to allow that to run down towards the bottom now. A bit further and then back up that way. And that's it. And I'm going to let that dry au naturel, or I might just give it a helping hand, and then when it is dry, I'll be right back. Big squeaky chair. I think it needs tightening up. Right, so yeah, I'm getting kind of happy with the way this is looking, so I don't think I want to do too much more to it now. What I do want though is just to bring back that white gesso. I did say earlier that it probably would come back, so I'm just going to pick up some of the white gesso on the page there. Just grab some water and we're going to add some nice splatters up there. Just bring a few down here as well. I'm not going to put too many down there. So again, and I've said this a million times, art journaling is usually around about 90% drying time. In my case, it's cleaning up and drying. So let's just get rid of all that, get this dried, and then I'll be back. Those white splatters are now completely dry. So what I'm going to do is I also want to add in some darker ones. So let me see if I can find a nice pot of black gesso from somewhere. Now all I'm pulling out is whites. Come on, there must be a black pull in here somewhere. Knee deep in it, there we go. I'm normally knee deep in this stuff. Okay, black gesso. So this time I'm just going to use some indigo blue. Mainly because that's all I've got. I probably would have picked it even if I had others. There we go. Oh, I picked up the wrong tissue then. Oh dear, I'm having a messy moment. There we go. Right. Black gesso. Black gesso. Let's get some water. Just mix that up. And this time, I'm just going to do it towards the bottom. There we go. So once again, So a quick clear up. I managed to get black gesso all over my hand. Right, I'll get this cleaned up, get washed up, and then I'll be right back. The black is now dry, so I'm just getting the feeling that I want to add a little bit of stamping texture. So I'm going to use this scribble text stamp. So I'll just add that to a stamp block, that way up. Okay, these stamp blocks are a bit thick actually, I could do with some thinner ones. Maybe I need to set my mind to creating some of my own. Okay, so just add just some light kind of text. Almost can't see it because I'm using the grey. This is hickory smoke that I'm using. I can't say it's particularly juicy. Yeah, you can barely see it. So, right, let's just stop it there then. Put those away, and then I'll be needing those in a moment. They're charcoal pencils. Okay, so now I want to add a phrase, a quote. So I've printed off while I was cleaning up on a sticky label. So what we were talking about earlier when I was saying about embracing the unexpected, expecting the unexpected and learning to let go. So that's exactly what I've just printed off on this address label. I've not gone mad with like sticker paper or anything. I just thought, well, I've got loads of address labels, so why not? It's the cheapest and easiest probably resource that most people have got, the sticky address labels. And if you can print on them or even type on them, if you've got a typewriter and some sticky labels, even better. Even better. So I'm going to add that up here, just on that kind of horizon line. Yeah, just about there. Learn to let go. And then this last one, the expect the unexpected, I'm going to add below, over this side. Because they're sticky labels, they'll stick down quite nicely. If you want to, you can go over the top with a matte medium just to seal them in, if that's your thing. I'm not going to bother. So instead I need to find out what did I do with my Stabilo All pencil. There it is. Stabilo All. So first things first, I just want to add a little bit of colour onto those because I think they're a bit too harsh. So let's just see if I can find, have we got a honey distress cry, wild honey distress cry? Now is that too orange? That's tea dye. Is that too red? No, I think that'll work just nice. So distress crayon, tea dye. I'm just going to rub it over the top just to kind of grunge it up a little bit. There we go. It just takes the whiteness off while keeping that same kind of colour family. Okay, so stabilo all pencil, and then I can just go around. So these are, it's a water soluble pencil. So in a moment I shall get a paintbrush and activate. There we go. So have we got a little paintbrush? Have I got a little paintbrush to hand? I'm sure I have it. Yes, there we go. Grab some water. And then it'll literally just activate. So any kind of water reactive pencil really will do the trick. It's a bit much, a bit too dark, so add a bit more water, and then we can just start lifting some of that off, I think, before it soaks in too far. And the more water you add, the more it'll kind of diffuse. And I'm just going to draw it down and then draw it away. Push it away with the brush, and then I can just move it with my finger. There we go. And again the same here. Bring it away. You can just push it with the brush away from the edge. Water it down. There we go. Learn to let go. Expect the unexpected. I'm just lifting just dry that out. It looks a little bit darker while it's still wet. Like I said, embrace the imperfection, expect the unexpected. So let's get that dried off. Okay, so everything's pretty much dried now. So I just think what I want to do is just add a little bit of a kind of border around the page. So I've got this charcoal pencil. So I'm just going to just kind of add a diffused kind of wiggly shaded border. Almost like a frame, if you like. Without being too kind of explicit with wiggly lines. And that kind of just finishes off the art journal page for me. So again, just a kind of exercise in refamiliarising myself with ways in which to add colour and paint to a page. I've not gone mad with background papers, because you could also, before you started, added in tissue paper into that background, or stamped onto the background first before adding your first layer of paint. There's 1,001 ways in which to create an art journal page, which is what makes it, you know, all the more interesting of a hobby or a pastime, is working the different ways that you can create, adding in different elements, adding in different colours, adding in different textures, above with your underpapers and over the top with your stamps. So I hope you've enjoyed watching me refamiliarise myself with doing this kind of art journal page. If you have, please remember to give the video a thumbs up, share the video with your friends, and if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, you can do so by clicking the button at the end of the video. That's all from me for now. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye for now. I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of my angels, because without you, these videos would not be possible. Thank you.